Are you ready to move on from your current role as a designer, art director, or creative? And now it's time to update your portfolio website after more than a couple of years. What's up, designers and creatives? My name is John, aka The Design Guy, and this video is a portfolio review that I did with an art director named Allie. Allie has been at her current role for the last 5 years, and now she's ready to move up within the creative industry. During this portfolio review, we talked about how to position your portfolio website to demonstrate your experience, how to tell a story with your design projects, and how to filter down your work to really align with that next career move. Allie is a really talented art director, and we covered so much during this portfolio review. So let me know in the comments which part you found the most helpful.
Allie, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me where you're at and what you would like to kind of walk away from this portfolio review with.
Yeah, so I'm an art director, senior art director at a small agency. Been there for a long time, and I haven't really updated my portfolio since then. So I'm looking to make it look more senior so that I can potentially move into a new, more senior role next year. I mean, the situation at work is the agency is small and it's getting smaller, and I don't have a lot of faith in it moving forward anymore. So it's kind of now we have to figure out the next solution.
Okay, let's pull up your portfolio. I have it here. What are you using? Is this Adobe portfolio?
This is Wix. I mean, Wix, I know how to use it. I'm sure there's cooler things that can be done with other things, but this is just kind of what I have.
This is going to be really easy in terms of what things you need to do. One, really quickly, let's talk about platform. Wix, it's not like, oh my God, I'm not coming at this from like, oh my God, you're using Wix. Portfolios I've seen on Wix in the process of building these layouts or whatever it may be, it is somewhat confusing, complex, just it doesn't really help you. There are better platforms that will give you more, make it easier for you to build a layout or a page layout. Wix, I just find to be lacking in functionality, especially when we get to mobile and things like this. It's 2023 Wix. Come on. Consider using something like Adobe Portfolio. There are some cool stuff, templates for Framer that I've made and stuff like that. But again, at the end of the day, it's how much work do you want to put in? And that's why Adobe Portfolio seems to be pretty
Okay.
easy lift in that sense. I have a little mini course. If you've never used Adobe Portfolio, I can send that over. It's it'll just walk you through pretty much the same idea of how to create a layout.
Okay.
Second thing, for these projects, having images is great, but to communicate that idea that you're more senior now doesn't happen through visuals necessarily. You can think of it this way. There was a designer, a creative that I spoke with a couple of years ago on this podcast that I was doing. And her portfolio website was a Google Doc. She just bought her domain and it redirected to this very specific Google Doc that had slide images on it, but she had written, this very well considered articulate bodies of text and descriptions. And that is what communicates your seniority or kind of your level and your experience. Because at the end of the day, visuals is layer one of diffusing a client, and then level two and level three are talking to the client and convincing them that your story that you've built up behind the visuals that you've created are what is going to that's going to convince them, right? And so the same idea here, having two sentences about this project either tells me that you did more visual work on it or you didn't have much involvement. We want to be able to articulate everything that we did. So if you had a hand in this video, tell me about that. Tell me what it was that you did. Tell me if you contributed to the art direction, the styling, the framing of the compositions, things like that. When I see images like this of just a bunch of smiling customers, potentially, I don't know what it means. I don't know what this is. Think of it that way. If someone like me or your mom or your friends down the road who aren't designers look at these images, what are they going to take away from this? I think the default answer usually is someone going to look at this and just say that's nice, I like it. And so how do we get them to say or think more than that?
Is someone necessarily looking to see for each part though, for the lifestyle photography? I worked on the wardrobe, I worked on the props, the pre-pro, the casting.
I think
That's just
if you have all those points, I don't think there is a world on in a portfolio website, especially if you're like, wanting to go work for like more in-house or a bigger organization, I don't think any of that would ever hurt you. When you get in an interview and they're looking to hire you for this position that's somewhat senior, if you showed them this and never told them anything else that you did, they'd be like, well, I might actually need someone that can fill in this skill, that skill, that skill, right? Oh, like she's not just creative, she's actually like resourceful and responsible because she can also do the casting, she can also do, the scene direction, whatever it may be. Like that's only going to add to your skill set. That's only going to add to your Swiss Army knife of like, yeah, I'm a designer, I'm a creative or art director, but I can also do all these other things as well.
Hey, if you're enjoying this portfolio review and you're finding some of the things that we talked about as helpful, then make sure you subscribe to this channel, as I do portfolio reviews like this all the time.
I think a really great, like to that point, think of the Wyndham Rewards project as a big article for the sections within an article, right? Because an article is just a bunch of headings inside of it with text that goes below it. If lifestyle photography is one of those headings within this quote unquote article, write it or think of it in a way like you just said, like I had a hand in the casting. Great, right? Like 1 to 2 sentences about the casting. I had a hand in the costumes. Great. 1 to 2 sentences about that, maybe even 3, whatever, and like do that for every image. It's better to have more and edit down than to not have much. This is my old portfolio. I haven't worked on this in years, but this is that exact thinking when I did this project. It's like, cool, here's a quick overview, right? Then here's 2 sentences about the logo because I worked on that and that was a big part. Here's a sentence about the typography. Now I'm esoteric really, because it doesn't really mean, it's like, yeah, the typeface. Yeah, it's like the typeface is round and bubbly because like that's the brand. Great. But again, like it's giving that at least that thought and articulating it, because if you just saw this, you'd be like, all right, cool. That like writing or that 1 or 2 sentences is putting that intention behind it. Same thing with the website in the pocket. So like there's sections in here about like art direction and video, and each one I'm writing 1 to 2 bits of copy for that. And you should be doing the same with your projects. That is going to ultimately kind of show off that expertise, that seniority.
It always feels like the most senior portfolios I look at, they have like 1 sentence and it's just like video and no words.
Yeah, because also like when you're at 10 years of experience, like, I kind of just mentioned, like, I haven't worked on my portfolio in 5 years. That's because all of the people that I work with now are either people I've had relationships with, like previous business relationships with, where they know the work I'm doing, or I am chatting with them offline in a way where the last thing is like, oh yeah, just send me some work so I know like whatever I could share with a friend or something like that. So don't let those people are normally not in the game. They're playing a different game. And that's why like they have 1 or 2 sentences. You're not playing that game just yet. You're in the like go up the ladder. I want to kind of like move into an organization more senior. That requires different information. I get your point of like, oh, like these really senior people don't have portfolios. Like, yeah, because they also get hired through friends who are also really high up in big companies. Really quickly on the homepage, this will kind of level back to this idea of like shifting platforms for your portfolio. You have some projects on here that, like, for example, this Eco ATM, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of meat in this project. If you can write a lot about this project, then absolutely. But if not, you want at least 3 projects that are going to be meaty projects. You have a lot of projects on here, and this Eco ATM one, in your mind, this was a good project in terms of results because we had a good completion rate. It drove this, X, Y, and Z. And if you can't show that, then you should consider what other projects are going to be more beefy and visual and allow you to articulate more, and prioritize those over something that might be a little bit more difficult. Get to the figure out those 3 projects first. And then when it comes time to go back to maybe a project like Eco ATM, maybe we figure out a way to display it differently than the top 3 priorities. Now, and I'm not saying that like Eco ATM couldn't be like one of your top 3 projects, because you could easily go back in here and say, you know what, there's actually some visuals I can pull out of this from whatever files, and I can add those to this and blah, blah, blah. If you feel like that is a project that says a lot about you, then absolutely. But if not, what are the 3 projects here that you want to really show kind of paints a good picture of you as an art director and as a creative?
So the Marcus Addis one has like a lot of stuff to it, but it's not a campaign.
What is it?
I did the logo and the branding for one of Marcus Samuelson's new restaurants. And we did like soccer jerseys, like we just did a bunch, and I did the website. We did a lot of stuff, but like it's not a campaign.
Okay. I mean, you're creative, right? Like,
I'd like to also don't
me.
want to do branding is the other thing.
Okay, so then don't show this. Like, yeah, it's great. And, doesn't mean you can't have this at some point on your website or later on or somewhere where people don't see it immediately. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, I have projects on my website that are just hidden by the URL, right? Like, 'cause I just don't have that link up there for someone to click it and easily find it. But I know that if I want to go link to that project, I know where to find it. And that could be an example of this if you want to just have it on there to save it and stuff. But again, like, if you don't want to do branding, then like, what's the point of showing it?
Yeah.
It's really just for you to have so that if anyone does ask you and you really do want to do that someday, then here you go. But if not, if you want to focus on more campaigns, then prioritize those projects. Like at the time, again, when I was working on my portfolio website, the project Well Fed was a result of wanting to learn more about how to work within media and working on different mediums at once, right? So I joined Vice working on the TV channel, but like I ended up working with like a lot of different ads and TV spots and audio and this and that. And at the time, Vice was a company that was doing a bunch of different platforms. And so I created a project for me to do that. And in doing that, it was like a lot of branding and a lot of website and digital work. And that's because that's what I wanted to do, and that is the first project on that website that everyone would, when, if I got reached out by a recruiter or someone, they would email me and they say, I really like this project. It's the first one on the page. And it's because I emphasize that as something that I want to continue doing, in the visuals and the copy and all that stuff. And the same thing goes for you as well. Whatever it is you want to do, put those in the top 3 spots and people will start asking you about them. If that's the case, when we think about this homepage design, like maybe having 2 next to each other is not necessarily the best, right? Because then it's like, what are you prioritizing? What is the most important thing here? Or what kind of story do we want to tell? So prioritizing 3 projects that, speak back or level back to this idea of wanting to get more ad campaign or creative work. I think also even before that, like maybe start putting together a list of places that you'd want to work. Yeah, everyone loves Patagonia and I get it. Think about those companies besides Patagonia. What are the smaller companies that you might actually find opportunity and might enjoy? Because there are a lot out there. And then try to figure out like what's going to impress them. Like work backwards, right? Like imagine you having the job at Patagonia. How did you get there? What did you do to get there besides like fill out an application on LinkedIn or whatever it may be?
Yeah.
Like, did you contact their creative director ahead of time? Did you like ask people on their team? Stuff like that. Any other questions you want to go over or anything you want to talk about specifically?
I mean, I guess it's just like more of like how to like present the project since I have like an array of different types of projects and like telling the story of like, because even though like I'm not looking for branding jobs, it's like, how can I still use that to my benefit, that project?
First, if you're saying that you have so many different projects, right, or so many different types of projects, then narrow that down. That's an option. I have a branding, I have a website, I have this. Again, like we're saying, filter some of these things out. Only focus on the things that you want to do more of. To your point of like, how do we use the Marcus project to our benefit because it's a big name, it's a notable person, there's obviously equity that comes along with that, which is great. And I'm glad you recognize that because at the end of the day, sure, you did some branding work for it, but what is like the takeaway from that, right? Again, thinking of like the YouTube influencer clickbait version for a designer's portfolio. You have influencers going out and like doing these crazy things and like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened, like as the title of the video, right? How do we use that to our advantage? So like, yeah, you did the brand identity for Marcus's new restaurant, whatever, but like, what is the big benefit for that? It's like launching, what's the restaurant called?
Marcus Addis. It's like his homecoming to Ethiopia. It's a cool story.
Marcus Samuelson brings Ethiopia to wherever the restaurant brings a taste, a slice of Ethiopia to whatever. What is the PR headline for a project like that, or for a campaign, which you should be familiar with, right? Like you can think of it in that way. You can kind of give it that kind of title because at the end of the day, like few people in the world know what a brand identity is. Now more people know what brand is, right? If you're telling Joe Schmo on the corner, like, I did a brand identity for Marcus Samuelson, they'll probably be like, great. But if you tell them like you helped launch famous chef Marcus Samuelson's Ethiopian restaurant, they'll probably be more excited about that. Like, oh, I know Marcus Samuelson. I know he's a restaurateur, and I didn't know he likes, or like he had Ethiopian roots or whatever, Like those are the things that are more familiar to people, and I think that is a better way to kind of headline these projects than to just be like brand identity for X. And then when you're thinking through that, or when you think of that headline, again, you can start to put yourself in a place of working backwards. How did we get to the part that we launched the restaurant? What were the things before that we did? How did we start, or where did we start? Things like that.
And kind of like tell the story of the process.
Absolutely.
They bought the space, they built the building. That's like way back, but
if you can be creative, like if you can be talented and creative and put your thought to imagery and visuals without actually having to explain it and telling the story around, like you're saying, like the building was, an old 1960s building, you can kind of just let like your visual skills speak in some of the imagery and things like that. You'll go a lot further than if you put so much emphasis on like, like the logo designer. I'm trying to look at like some of the stuff here. Like, yeah, the icons and patterns are great, and that's a great thing to show. But like, instead of talking about it, like the bushbuck is an isolated and highly distinctive race of bushbuck found in the highlands of Ethiopia. And so like, this is like a, for lack of a better word, a deer. What's so great about, can you tell a story about this deer and why it is important to incorporate into Marcus? Like what tie does it have to Marcus and to this restaurant, right? Rather than like.
Because it's on the top of the tallest building in East Africa, and this deer lives in the mountains.
Yeah, so like how can we take those elements, tell a better story about these things, right?
Because I know some people set up their stuff with like problem solution.
That is like a great bare minimum.
Yeah.
That is a great bare minimum because you're setting them up with the beginning and the end, but there is no, and sort of the visuals can be the middle. That's like again, that's like a bare minimum, I think.
The easy way to do it, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it, but that is what I would say is like the thing that you should at least have is like, what was the problem and how did you solve it? Is there anything else that you want to go over in terms of design, website, career, stuff like that?
Well, I have like one like personal project in here just thrown in there with everything else. Not sure if that's like a confusing place to put it, because I know people like want to like get to know you in that way more.
Which one?
The last one, the autism awareness. Yeah.
It's the last one. Okay. So tell me about this.
So I just put together like a virtual 5K for Autism Awareness Month. My brother's autistic, and all the money went to like a local organization in Philly that he's a part of. I made the t-shirts. It's mostly like my friends and family who did it, but I thought of it more as like a get to know me as a person type thing. Like these are things I actually care about. And like, yeah, I used my like skills to make it happen.
But like, are people going to go to this page and then get to know you because of this?
I don't know. I mean, it's like something that I care about.
Sure.
Maybe have a connection to it.
I think it's really optimistic for people to get that much of a takeaway about you from a couple of these pages, no matter what. I think if anything, like the things that I want people to come away with from my portfolio website, my sense or my taste in design visually, my quality of work, and my thinking. They're not going to know that like I'm an asshole or like I'm very sarcastic or that I'm really passionate about X, Y, and Z. They're just like, it's just a lot of things to try to cram in to the purpose of a website, I think. For like, that's my thought on it. Mm-hmm. I want those very clearly, my design taste, quality of work, process, really. And this is again like why I like, I'm a big advocate of like, your portfolio website being not necessarily, I don't want to say sacred, but like a place where like your best stuff is. All the other platforms that we have for social media can be like literally the place that you post everything. Like I post everything on my Instagram and my TikTok and stuff like that, because it's like, I don't care at the end of the day. The website is more of like the final, pretty, very focused on like my thinking and my design taste, and that's it.
Okay, yeah. So like it's like a less is more, you would say.
Yes, less is more in this situation.
And that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this portfolio review helpful. And if you want more tips just like this, then make sure you subscribe, as I do reviews like this all the time. And if you want a review, then check out the link in the description. Have a good day.